Good evening, folks. How are you? And welcome along to this next session. I'm Cara Devaney and I am a consultant and corporate strategist. And this is part of my series on get you and your business ready to work with corporates. So, whether you're joining for the first session because you read the description and went, this is the one I need to be at, or whether you've been here all along, you are very welcome. So, what am I talking about today? What I'm talking about today is the shape of your business, and that could mean a lot of things. It doesn't mean a geometric shape, it means what shape your business is in. And here's advice I give to people all the time at the early stage of them thinking about getting into working with corporates is figure out that your business is in a good shape before you start doing this. And that sounds a bit vague, so I like to then give a bit more detail on what that actually means. And that really means before you start trading with a bigger business, which you can totally do, you don't have to grow and be huge and enormous in order to trade with big businesses. I traded lots with big businesses as a solopreneur when I started out, and you can do the same. Obviously, if you've got a bigger company, you can also do that too. But you don't have to scale up in order to work with the bigger businesses. But what you do want to do is make sure that you've got strong foundations in your business before you start trading with a bigger business, because you don't really want to look amateurish. It's fine to be small, but it's not fine to be amateur. You don't want to look like everything's kind of homespun, and you also don't want, when you start winning these big contracts, to feel like you're a little bit out of control of it. You want to be working with corporates on your terms. So that's what we're going to cover tonight, is what does that having your business in good shape look like. It's kind of like a health MOT for your business we're going to cover. So here's the three parts that we're going to cover. Sorry, four parts that we're going to cover. We're going to cover structure, going to cover costs, going to cover pricing, and then we're going to cover operations slash business development. That's one category on its own. So these are the four things we're going to go over tonight. I might check my notes a little bit here because there's some key points I really want to make sure I don't miss when I take you through it tonight. So here is the first thing that you need to know about the structure of your business. And you should already know this, but you want to answer a couple of the big questions right away. And if you haven't answered these, you're probably not in business yet. So the first one is, are you a sole trader or are you a limited company? Now, if you've established your business, you've made that choice. Now, if you are a sole trader, you can still work with corporates. What I will advise you though is that some corporates won't work with sole traders. Not all of them, but some corporates will not work with sole traders. You won't really find it in a policy particularly, but you'll find some just won't engage with you. They'll want you to be a limited company. But that doesn't mean you're totally excluded from it. What I would say though is, if you're going to have a really strong corporate pipeline and you're going to start to win lots of corporate work, which, let's face it, if you're intentional about it and you go out and seek it, you will win the work. If you've got something to offer and you choose who you want to work with, this will happen for you. So if you're going to do that and have a strong corporate pipeline, you have to think really seriously about, there might come a point if you're a sole trader now that you do want to become a limited company in the future. So I'm not saying you have to go out and do it now, but you may want to think about it in the future. I'll give a little bit of advice about overseas work, which is that if you work in the North American continent, you seriously want to consider being a limited company. And that's because being a limited company limits your personal liability. And the nature of North America, so Canada and the United States, is that the work is more litigious, so more people get sued basically. And what you don't want to be sued for are your personal assets. So you don't want someone coming around, taking your dog, your cat, your shirt, and your house. You want to have some limits around that. So I would say if you're trading in one of those countries, you really should look at being a limited company right away. Otherwise, decide which one you are just now, and then think about, okay, at what point would I maybe switch to becoming a limited company? And if you've got a real resistance to that, then drop me a message about maybe why that is, because I'm happy to chat to you about it. So that's the first thing in your structure, is figure out which way you want to go. Oh, hello, Kerry is here. Kerry, I got your email. I will come back to you. Lovely to hear from you. It's always lovely to hear from Kerry. See how it makes me smile? Some people have that effect on you. That's kind of how you want to be to your corporate clients, by the way. Like when the phone rings or they see your email, they're like, oh, well, what are they going to do? Oh, Kerry is putting up her cat as collateral against being litigated. That's terrible. I don't think you would really do that. Okay, so that's the first piece on structure. Second piece on structure is, are you going to be VAT registered? So if you're trading in the UK and you're going to be VAT registered, then you need to make sure that you understand the implications of that, that you know how to manage it, that either you've got an accountant or a bookkeeper or you're really well versed in dealing with it. Because once you start trading with corporates, if you're charging them VAT and you're collecting VAT from them, you need to make sure you're managing that effectively, and also that you're reclaiming any VAT on things that you've been doing. Now, the reason I see a lot of people go from consumer work or small business work into corporate and start to become VAT registered is because they tend to be having a higher turnover. So they tend to be making significant sums of money, sometimes in quite short spaces of time. And the VAT threshold is 85,000. So if your turnover is 85,000, not your profit, your turnover is 85,000, you're going to have to be registered for VAT. Now, an accountant can advise you properly on when to do that, how to do it, how to manage your VAT. That's not my background. But what you do want to understand is if you, in the middle of a year, when you're not VAT registered, suddenly start to make over that amount, there are some implications around that. So get advice from your accountant if you think, actually, I could be getting close to that threshold, or if you know that you've got some work in your pipeline that will trigger that threshold. Because I've actually been in a situation with one of the associates in my own business that I went to him and said, do you want to do some work? Here's some work we've got. It was like £25,000 of work, a really nice piece of work, high day rate, good client. And he said, I can't take on any more work because I've hit the VAT threshold and I'm not registered and it's going to cost me a lot of money. So you don't want to ever be in the situation where you've got lovely work being handed to you and you have to say no. So it's just about thinking about these things just now. This is not saying you have to go out and do all of these things. This is a foundational course. So this is really about saying, think about all these things and think about when you might have to do them. Okay, let me just take a breath here. So next thing, in terms of the foundational elements, is costs. And I'm going to harp on about this in the group as well as on the course, because lots of people ask me about their pricing. And I mean, pricing is not something you can really give a totally generic answer on. It really is specific to people's business, the sector, lots of things. We'll talk about pricing in a minute. But the first thing that I tend to ask them is about their costs. And here is my contention. If you are in small business, you have an absolute duty to yourself to understand your costs. If you don't know your costs, you cannot know your pricing. You cannot do your pricing if you do not know your costs. Now, I like numbers. I'm comfortable with numbers, small numbers, big numbers, really, really comfortable with them. And I know that not everyone is in that same space. And there are people I work with who are so comfortable with numbers, the type of work they do, they would think I'm like a numbers novice, they think I'm on an abacus. So it is a spectrum. But what I would say is if you are not comfortable with numbers and you're not comfortable with costs and you're not going to be able to obsess about them, because as a small business owner, you have to be obsessed with your costs. You have to be obsessed with all the numbers in your business. That's how you actually really get a feel for how your business is performing. The devil is in the detail of numbers, and I say that as not a detail person, but actually the way the numbers are in your business will tell you a lot about your business performance. It's really, really important that you understand it. And if you're going to work with corporates, it's really important that you can talk about numerical aspects of business in a really confident way. So you want to develop that, and it's not something that's hard to develop. But you want to get obsessive about the costs in your business. You want to obsess about your numbers. And if that makes you just think, oh my goodness, why are you saying that? I can win the work, I can do the work, we don't need to talk about numbers, then I'm going to give you like a bit of a reality check here. This is not a hobby, this is a business. And if you're working with corporates, you can make a substantial amount of money. So why would you not get real about your numbers? You might not like it. It might not be the part of your business you enjoy. You might actually get someone else to do it for you. You might outsource it. You might say to someone, I need you to run that and I need you to tell me what it says, because you're not going to get into the finite detail. I love reading all the numerical information, but you might just want to have the headline numbers read to you and told what they mean. That's absolutely fine. Doesn't mean you have to do every pound of bookkeeping, but you do have to really get yourself into the space of thoroughly understanding how money moves about in your business. And the first thing that you're going to focus on is your costs. Do you know your costs? So what is it costing you to run your business? What is it costing you to deliver every service item in your business? So whatever the service is, what does that cost you? What does it cost you to do nothing? If you have to spend a month where you do nothing, what is the core running cost of your business? You need to know that. And if you've got products, what is the cost of every product? So absolutely obsess over what all of those are. And you choose to do your business whatever way you do. You might take your running costs and add a percentage of that to every service and product. You might keep them separate. It really depends how you structure it. But what you do need to know is what those numbers are and how they apply in your business. That fundamental piece that I really want you to be comfortable understanding. Because let me tell you, the people you're going to do business with in corporate, they know that and they know it to the penny. And I've worked on $40 billion and £38 billion projects and portfolios, and people still know where every penny's going. Not every person knows where it's going, but there are people who know where every penny's going. So you do have to have a level of confidence in your own costs, and you're not going to be managing billions. You know, you might be great, well done if you get to that stage, but then if you hate numbers, you'll have someone else doing it for you anyway. We have a whole team of people. But wherever you're going to go from where you are now to a higher turnover or a higher profit by working with corporates, you just need to understand that numerical element. So I'm labouring the point now because it is really important, and it's something that I see people struggle with when they got all the rest of it right. I do see them sometimes win work that they've not properly priced because they didn't understand the costs. So actually they come and go, I won some work and I delivered it, but I didn't make the money that I should have, and I probably could have asked for more, and I would have, but I didn't know what my costs were. So really understand your costs. And there's loads of information available online around where you can get good downloads of things that just we forget sometimes what we spend. So if you're not in the habit of keeping track of it every day or every week or every month, then get something that's a good tracker that will make you pick up all those different costs. Okay, so once you know all of those costs, here are the 3 fundamental tipping points that you need to know in your business around costs. You need to know when you go from zero to just paying your costs. So how much money are you making? And this is whether you work on a weekly, daily, yearly or annual basis. I like to actually have it at a weekly level, a monthly level and an annual level. You need to know these things. At what point are you paying your costs? So how much money does it take to pay all of those costs? And including that, any fees that you've got, any accountancy fees. And then at what point do you start making money? So at what point do you start making a profit? Because that's the point we go from this is an activity to this is a productive business. So really, really important that you know, because also you want to now know you've got the security of, oh, when that amount's in, we're into profit and everything from here on in is profit. Now that's not to make you take a back seat. That's actually, some people will be really motivated by that. Like, yeah, now we're making money, let's go for it. Other people will think, oh, I need to get to that stage. So you figure out whatever emotional reaction you have to that, because let's face it, all of us have an emotional reaction to money. We just need to understand what it is, how it makes us behave and how it drives our decisions. We don't want to remove emotion from money. But you want to really know, like, at what point do I start to make a profit? Because you have to get to that point, because that's the fundamental point to get to. Okay, let me have a quick drink of water. So if you know those numbers, it really helps you to do pricing. And pricing is probably the most common thing that people struggle with. I don't think it's the thing that is a barrier for people, but it's the thing people find difficult. And the reality of why you find it difficult is because it's actually quite difficult to price your service. It depends on so many different factors. Because it's related to money, then our emotions do get in our way, and our own headspace gets in our way. So I'm going to talk you through a few key elements of pricing for corporates. And it is different from pricing from consumers. You'll find some of the things are similar, but there are some key different elements that I'm going to talk to you about. So here are the things that matter when you're pricing. Pricing is about supply and demand. So how many people are offering what you're offering is the supply. How many people are buying what you're offering is the demand. And whenever supply and demand are out of alignment with each other, it impacts on the pricing. So if I think about perhaps during the early days of lockdown, and some people were going out and bulk buying things, and people were in panicked behaviour. And I offer no judgment on people's consumer behaviour. It's a horrible time that none of us had ever lived through before. But if people were going out and buying all the toilet paper, we were calling it the white gold in our family. If people were going out and buying all the toilet paper or all the pasta, that suddenly is creating a huge demand at the same time as people are not able to produce it as much. So you've actually got market forces impacting on both supply and demand at the same time. Now, what does that do? There's less of the resource and there's more need for it. It drives the price up. However, if things go in the other way, and I'll tell you a little story about one of my friends who's a great businesswoman. She's one of those people who's a total polymath. She's had all sorts of businesses, and what she is great at doing is spotting a new trend, leaping on it, having a business in that space, and then getting herself out of there before that trend has gone. And she used to have a juice bar. She had a juice bar when juice bars were just all opening and they were quite trendy. I mean, I like a fresh juice. But at this point, I was like, a shop just selling juice and smoothies. Like, how's that going to make money? My goodness, she did really well. Because at that point, demand was actually just starting to hit its peak and the supply wasn't really huge. So juicing was really in as a health trend. There were lots of people into it. It was a real sort of California vibe about the juice shop, and she had it in the city in Glasgow. And then she realised there are juice bars everywhere. Okay, so now the supply is outstripping the demand, and she sold hers and she got out. And actually, probably half of the juice bars that were open then have gone now. And that's supply and demand in those two instances really playing out, and that affects you too. So, what is the demand for what you do? Really think about what is the demand for what you do. And part of the reason that I want you to think about that is because you relate that to what the business challenges are that corporates have. So what is it that they need that you offer? They're the demand, and you're the supplier. So, and also have a look at who else is supplying what you've got. Okay, so really think about supply and demand. If you are in a niche market, in America they call it niche. So they always say the niches are in the riches are in the niches. And I would definitely agree with that. What I would say is when you go into corporate, don't create like a super niche that no one's ever heard of. Like, you're not going to be able to go super niche with corporates that they're like, well, that's 4 people in the whole world. Unless you've got a premium product that that's going to work. So you do want to be niche if you can, but don't really go super niche unless you're already really experienced in this market. You want to keep enough of a breadth that there are enough people to buy from you when you're entering this market. So I have a niche business, I have a super niche element to it, but we lead with a niche, and sometimes we deliver some of the super niche stuff. So have a think about that. That's your supply and demand aspect to your business that I want you to think about. What's the supply? What's the demand? Next thing that's going to affect you in corporate pricing are market rates. So there will be some market rates for what you offer. And unless you're bringing something completely new to the market, they will have a fair idea of what the range within those rates are. And that's something that you're going to have to try and figure out. And I'll come back to how you can do that. But there will be market rates for what you do. Sometimes those market rates when you work in certain areas will be capped. So if you work with certain elements of the public sector, you will sometimes have a capped rate. So there are some clients that we work with where we know what the upper limit of what they'll ever pay for a day's worth of a certain type of work is. If you can find out that information, that's really useful to you. The next thing that's going to affect your pricing is your market position. And I was working with my people in the corporate method course recently, and we were talking in a lot of detail about this because it's really something to get into a lot of detail about and understand. But I'm just going to give you like the positioning of what your market position is. That was using the word position too much in one sentence. But what is your market position? It's basically, how are you setting yourself out there in the market? So when you're presenting yourself to corporates, do you want to be cheap and cheerful, so I can sell you lots of what I've got and it's going to be really low price? Are you going to be, I'm kind of like in a mid-range, so I'm below the top of the market rate, but I am not bargain basement, I'm sitting here in the middle? Or are you going to be high end, so I'm top of the rate, so I'm hitting it up the top of the market rate and I'm super quality? Or are you going to be boutique? So boutique is that you've got a specialism as well. Boutique is ultra priced. It's next to that high end rate. What I will say is, wherever you're going to position yourself in the market, be really clear about the reasons why you're doing that, and make sure that when you're pricing and you're thinking about your market rates and you're thinking about your market position and you're thinking about supply and demand, that you also go back and look at your costs. Because I see this become a runaway train at times, where people really look at the market rate and think, okay, yeah, I know what I can do. Actually, I know I can undercut people and go in and win all of this work. Right, okay, is the reason you can undercut them and win all of that work because you can't deliver it at a healthy profit? Because your costs are too high, because that might be why they are not delivering at that rate. Now, it might not be. The edge you've got over medium-sized businesses is that you've got much lower overheads, so you may actually be able to undercut their rates and still be in healthy profit. But what I want to get you to do is just get into the habit of, when you look at those prices, always go back and cross-refer to costs. Like, what is this costing me? Now, I could talk about what it's costing you emotionally, but that's a whole other episode, because I sometimes say, like, figure out the work that makes you money and the work that makes you joy. And if the two of them come together, that is the work you always want to be doing. Always, because that's basically your premium work. The work that you can make lots of money on, but actually you get up and think, oh, why am I doing this today? That is the work you want to manage out of your business altogether. Okay, so we've covered structure, we've covered costs, we've covered pricing. I want to say one last thing about pricing, and then I'm going to talk to you about operations and business development. So what I want you to be really clear about pricing in the corporate market is that your price is determined by those factors that we've talked about. So supply and demand, market rates, the cost to do business, your market position. It is in no way determined by your self-worth or your personal value at all. These things are totally separate. And if you're going to be working in corporate, sometimes you might be working at a rate because you've strategically decided, oh, I'm going to enter that market. I'm new to that market. There's quite a lot of supply, but there's quite a lot of demand, and I want to work in there. So I'm going to sneak in there. I'm not going to work at my highest rate. I'm going to work at a rate that's going to make me win work so that I can enter into this market. In no way is that attached to you being less or being less worthy, because actually your self-worth is completely separate from the cost that people will pay to do business with you. Even if you are bargain basement and you say, look, my business model is stack them high, sell them cheap, that does not mean that you are a low budget person or that you are a bargain basement person. Some hugely successful businesses work on that model, and it has nothing to do with your self-worth. And I really want to get that across, because I think in small businesses we are much more personally attuned to how much money comes into the bank and what people pay for a service or a product, and we relate that much more personally to us. And that makes perfect sense, because we're making it, we're creating it, we are the service a lot of the time. So it can be really easy to get caught up in the self-worth, and I've got caught up in it myself too. I remember doing my first big month where I billed out the amount of money that I remember thinking was a huge amount to earn in a year. So I'd had this figure in my head that when I was younger, if you could earn that much in a year, my goodness, you'd be so wealthy. Like I'd be living the dream. I wasn't thinking I'd have yachts, but I was just thinking I'd be really comfortable all the time. I can make people around me comfortable. I would have a great life. And this was a sum in my head. It was like, oh, that'd be amazing. And in the second year of my business, in 1 month, I built that. I went on to build more than that in future months. But I remember when I built that, being really taking it on board, and like really feeling a lot of personal success and being quite excited about it. And that was great. But the next month I built a little bit less, and I was like, oh, that's not as good. Like, I mean, it was like £2,000 less or something. But I was just like, oh, I want to get back to that. And then I realised that's great to have that as a business ambition, but I'm making this about me. Like, I'm making this about how I feel validated by the amount of money that's been given to me. And I know, because we all have money mindset stuff going on, don't we? I know that that's not a good spiral to be in, because if you're a workaholic and you equate your personal worth to money, then my goodness, what you will do is you will work and work and work, because that's how you get your self-worth. So it's external validation. So you might not have that emotional reaction to money. We've all got different emotional reactions to money, but it's really important that we just disconnect our worth to the money flowing in, because that's not what it's about. And no one, even in someone in corporate's like, oh, you're really expensive. What they're not saying is, you think more of yourself. That just like, that's an expensive service. People sometimes tell me I'm expensive. Oh, that your day rate? I can't afford that. Like, I can recommend someone who charges less. I'm okay with that. I'm not saying that happened easily, but I'm in that place now, and I want you guys to be in the place of being really comfortable with your worth, really comfortable with your price, and really comfortable with your costs. Because there are three things, but only two of them are related to each other. Your costs and your pricing are related to each other. Your self-worth is different. Okay, let me just tell you one other thing. When you're working on pricing and costs, if you feel that some money mindset stuff is getting in your way, like I believe we all have emotional reactions to money, and since actually becoming an entrepreneur, I've learned a lot more about my reactions to money and my money mindset and the archetypes and different things like that. I've been down a few different places to look at different work people do on money mindset, just to understand what are my emotional reactions to money and how can I use them to benefit me and not to deplete me, or to make choices that aren't great. If you feel that that is something that you need to deal with, then you need to deal with it. That's all I'm going to say. It's not something I teach. There are lots of people doing fabulous work on money mindset. I've worked with some amazing coaches on it. Some people have given me some just really useful information. Like there's an upper comfort level in making money. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And some people who've given me some really practical advice and good coaching and soul searching. So there's lots of resource out there. And if it's coming up for you, go and find someone who can help you with it and do the work. But that's all I'm going to say about money mindset. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the structure of your operations and your business development. So when you start out working towards winning corporate clients, you're going to have to do business development. And it's going to feel like in the beginning you're doing a lot of business development, because if you're at a zero or you're at a very small amount of corporate work, you're going to have to do a lot of business development. You're going to try, I always say, I try and win 10 times the amount of work I can deliver, because that way, it's a bit of a numbers game. Some of it will come off, some of it will not. Sometimes lots of it comes off at the same time, and I think, oh, what have I done here? I've got to deliver all of this, and then I go and find associates, or sometimes I can negotiate the timelines for the work. But you basically want to be doing lots of business development so that you start to build what I call a pipeline of work. So rather than doing one piece of work and it finishes and then you find the next client, you want to spend lots of time in the beginning doing as much business development as you can, so that the work can continue to come. Now, when I started my business, I knew that I wanted to work pretty much at that point exclusively with corporate clients. So I wanted to go out into the corporate market, and I wanted specific sets of clients in that market. So 100% of my business activity was business development. I spent probably 3 months just doing business development. Now then, over time, what happens is you start to do less business development and you start to deliver some of the work because you win the work. Now we're doing the operations. That's the core piece of the work. What happens over time is that percentage shifts, and now a few years in, my percentage is I do 80% of the work, 20% business development. Now, you can also outsource your business development, so you can pay someone else to do that so that you're just doing the work, but you still want to have a real understanding of how much time and energy and cost, because your time is cost, is going into your business development versus how much time you're operating. So how much time you're doing the work that you win. Because it's really important to understand that balance, because you want to start to see how much business development you have to do in order to win the work, and you want to start to look at that as a value premise. Now, what's a value premise? It's how much can I generate in income from doing business development? Because some people get into the headspace of, well, business development is just like taking people for coffee, going to conferences, swanning about. Actually, if business development is what is generating your income, that is a valuable activity in your business, and you want to have a budget dedicated to it, you want to have time and energy dedicated to it, and you want to have it in your diary. Now, whether you split that up over the week, the year, the month, that's up to you. Depends on how you do your business model. I will sometimes do a day every week, But then other times I'll know I'm so busy working on a commission and with small business clients that actually I'm going to have 4 weeks where I'll do no business development, and then I make sure I take a couple of days and just do it solidly. And business development's all the things that go in to attracting corporate clients to you. And that includes writing bids, winning work, making phone calls, being on LinkedIn, whatever it is for you, your business development. So I just want to let you know that in the beginning it feels like you're doing a lot of that, but over time it's a sliding scale. So you start with you're doing no work and lots of business development, but over time you start to do more work and less business development. But really until the point where you exit your business or you close your business, you're not going to do no business development. You always have an element of it, and that's how you keep the work coming in. So that's everything that I really wanted to cover in this session, and I hope that gives you some of the structural elements that it's really important you have as foundations in your business, because you want to understand what your business costs you to do, what are the key fundamental pieces of your business structure, such as being a sole trader, being a limited company, being VAT registered, not being VAT registered. Make all these big decisions, or plan to make these big decisions at the beginning. What is your costs? So how does it cost you to run your business? What is your pricing, and what are the key things you need to take into account for that? And how much time are you going to spend on business development versus operations? So those are the really foundational elements to just think through. So I've covered a lot tonight. Yep, Kerry's saying it is a lot in one session. But you can always go back and rewatch this and just think, have I covered all those things? Have I thought about all of those things? So thank you very much for joining me. I hope this has been useful, and I will see you on the next session.